Give it a moment as folks come in through the waiting room. As always, we'll get started with introductions for the board and for the MCA team that's online. But for anyone that is attending in the audience, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat with your name and your organization or company that you're working with, that would be great. In lieu of Andrew Butcher, will be facilitating today with the support of Laura and Sarah from the MCA team. We have a very full agenda, mix of updates and some deep dives around financials. So go ahead and get started. Mike, if you want to kick off the board on introductions,
I
we'll
will.
popcorn
Mike
around.
Reed. Good morning. Oh, maybe. Yes, good morning. Mike Reed, interim chair from Palermo. Jim Carlson, go ahead.
Good morning, Jim Carlson, board member and interim treasurer, and I'll hand it off to Hannah.
Good morning, everybody. Hannah Carter, board member, deputy provost and dean of cooperative extension here at the University of Maine, based in Orono. Happy to hand it off to Danielle.
Thanks, Hannah. Good morning, everyone. Danielle Louder. I am board member as well and serving with expertise in telehealth and at MCD Global Health. And I will pass it over to Carlos B.
Thanks, Danielle. Carlos Barrionuevo, coming to you from a rainy Georgetown. I am the community rep on the board, and I will pass over to Carlos M.
I am Carlos Mello. I am the CEO at the Finance Authority of Maine and also a board member, and I will hand it off to Dr. Placido.
Good morning, everybody. Robert Placido. I'm the CIO for the University of Maine system, and I'll hand it off to Nicholas.
Good morning, everybody. Nicholas Marquis, Chief Information Officer for the state of Maine. And I will hand it off to, as I look at my list, Laura.
Sure. Yeah. Good morning. My name is Laura Vanderlucht, and I am the Chief Engagement Officer at MCA. And I will hand it to Sarah.
Morning, everyone. Sarah Scola, Director of Human Resources and Operations at MCA, and I'll hand it over to Lori.
Good morning, Lori Griffin Poland. I am the Director of Finance and Accounting at MCA, and I will hand it over to who's next?
Go David.
David, I think. Yeah.
David. Thanks.
Hi, David Weddick, Senior Financial Advisor to MCA, and I think that's it. So back to you, Kendra Jo.
Yeah, and I'm Kendra Jo. Nope, I'm Kendra Jo Grindle, and I'm the Chief Program Officer for MCA. I will hand it to Mike to get us through admin for previous board minutes.
Good morning, everyone. As Kendra Jo said, we've got a pretty full agenda, very well organized. We will have to go into a brief executive session towards the end of the program, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. So we'll alert you to that effect. We will be coming back after that executive session. This morning, well, you've seen the agenda. I don't need to read that to you. Our president, Andrew Butcher, is not available for the first time, I believe, ever for a board meeting, but he did try, and we kept pushing him away to take his well-deserved vacation. So Kendra Jo and the staff are going to fill in. We're just going to make sure Andrew knows we've got this. We can do it without him, but we'll put that in the minutes if we can. The first thing, Kendra Jo, if you would just please kick it off and give the president's report.
Well, quickly, if you wouldn't mind doing a quick review of the previous minutes.
Sorry, I have read right by it.
It's okay.
Yes, we need to vote on the previous minutes, and I know you've all reviewed them. That was a joint meeting we had with Connect Maine Authority. But is there any questions? Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded, Robert, thank you. Any discussion? Changes, edits? All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Now we'll move to Kendra Jo with a review of the president's report.
Perfect. Thank you all. And I'm gonna tag team with Laura and Sarah on a few items here. So overall, we've had not shocking to anyone, a fairly busy few months. Laura and I will dive a little deeper into a couple of the slides, but as you all have had access to, our staff report slides, so we're making a good bit of progress on our grants portfolio. We are working through contracting with our grants management system, fully onboarding the team. We had a great training this week on HubSpot, which is our new CRM. We'll have some MooseNet items further along, but we have both Tim Schneider's contracting support over the last month and through the end of the year to really build out and operationalize the RFP. Chris Bonikowski joins us July 6th, and adding additional capacity there. I did want to just quickly give an update. I know she's joining us online today as well, but Jen Page is our new MooseNet grant manager, joined us on Monday and has just hit the ground running, really onboarding to the organization first and then onboarding fully to the MooseNet team. So as we probably get deeper into MooseNet on the infrastructure calls, that's where you might be seeing more of her. But Jen, if you haven't introduced yourself in the chat, please do. One of the biggest things that we wanted to flag coming into the conversation today is updates for the organization around our organizational chart, which I'll let Sarah speak to in a moment, and just kind of where we stand on some openings, our updated values, which Laura will speak to, and our strategic refresh. So there's the bigger picture that Laura is managing of the 4 years of Connectivity 2030. But as you all know, every 6 months, we as a team gather at an offsite and we really work through what did we do for the last 6 months? Have we hit our marks and our outcomes? And where are we prioritizing our time for the next 6 months? We have a great deal of work, and these 6-month check-ins are extremely helpful for resetting as a team, making sure we're progressing where matters. And so as I invite you to open the strategy refresh document that's linked. I see several of you in here. So really positive momentum over the last 6 months. Really excellent achievements across our expanding connectivity with BEAD implementation starting to roll out, and this kind of network of connectivity across the state clicking together between the last mile, finishing out of last mile grants from Connect the Ready, Reach Me, CME grants, NTA BIP, and leading into those BEAD contracts, as well as a lot of progress made with the Working Internet ASAP program that has been foundational to our relationship with Starlink for their BEAD contract. Over the next 6 months, those same impact goals: broadband service universally available in Maine, secure, reliable, competitive, and sustainable forward-looking infrastructure, ensure all residents, businesses, and institutions in the state are able to take full advantage, and ensuring organizational health and sustainability. As we look at those, which are our core threads throughout the year, those strategic imperatives that are beneath them: advancing the full BEAD portfolio, finalizing MooseNet operations, maintenance, and commercialization strategy, procurement, evolving and executing programming to capitalize the Digital Opportunity Fund, and continue operational upgrades and integration. Those are really where we're focusing for the next 6 months. That is not every single piece of work, but all of our work is scaling up into those goals and imperatives. We do further down the document outline that none of this is without risk. So how we're managing for some of those risks or some of the unknowns. There are elements of our work that are outside of our control, federal guidance, the ability to spend down and implement infrastructure on timeline, on budget, as many of you are aware. There are fiber delays, there are increases in workforce costs and implementation costs. So it's really critical that we have a pathway and some planning built into our process to make sure that we're adapting and managing for that risk. So while change is constant and inevitable, building out across all of our work and supporting our team to be able to hit our milestones every 6 months really ensures and continues to support that connectivity is critical. Are there any questions as you look through this document of kind of where we're looking to for the next 6 months? And as you can see, it just continues to build on and build on. There are some new items. There's a continuation of items from the last 6 months. Take no questions, as also there were no surprises, which is, I think, where we try to operate. All right. I will, let's see. I'm going to hand it over to Laura and invite her to come off mute and speak a little bit about our organizational values, which I will say on behalf of the entire team, we're very excited to share with the board.
Very much so. Thank you, Kendra. Good morning, everyone. So the fastest process update for these values is we started in January of 2026 at our all staff offsite, really interrogating our values that we had to date, right? Taking a moment when we were all together to say, do these still reflect how we want to do the work and how we want to measure whether or not we're being successful in doing our work and doing the big things that we're charged with doing, but also doing it in a way that aligns with our mission and our values, which is so crucial to who we are as an organization, but I think also to each one of us on the team, right? That we choose to be in this mission-driven work for a reason, and that matters to all of us pretty deeply. And so we had an internal team that took on the task of really shepherding a process of taking staff feedback and turning that into multiple layers of drafts and check-ins through our organizational culture working group, as well as through leadership and in other different groups of staff in order to arrive at this values refresh that we then brought to our end of May offsite for the team. And we really aligned around, and as Andrew would say, do my best Andrew impression today, we stacked hands on and are really excited about as a team. And so a couple of things to note here, sort of more broadly, just to orient you to what we're excited about with this set of mission, vision, and then values in particular, which is really where we did the most work. We wanted to make sure that we're taking a couple of things into focus as we did these. And so one, really grounding in our public service and stewardship for Maine people and Maine communities, and always having that at the forefront of what we do. And so what does that look like both internally and externally? I think that was one of the big changes that we implemented in this values refresh, is to say, we do so much of our work is externally focused, but how we actually work as a team and how we work as an organization needs to reflect those values as well. And so throughout the values that you see here, you see the key question we're asking ourselves to say, like, are we actually doing that thing? Are we living that day in and day out? And then additionally, the success measures. This is something that's reflective of how we're moving as an organization to also think about how we build measurement into the implementation of everything that we do, including who we are, what our values are, and whether we're living those both externally and internally. And then how we can build those performance measures and success measures into our overall structure and how we're measuring our success as an organization as well. And so this is really enshrining that in one of the sort of like highest level who we are as an organization locations, so that we can then make sure we are infusing that throughout our work. And so we're really the team is thrilled to be able to put this in front of you and also to be able to reflect that process that I discussed that really ensured we were collaborating as a full team to get to a set of values that we can really live within. So thank you. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you. Any questions or comments as you look through this MCA values refresh? Or anything that kind of lands with you?
Just appreciate the work put in, right? Like as a startup organization and taking the time to reflect as things evolve in a very complex and challenging landscape. And super glad to hear that the team has been so involved in it and the development, and that everybody's really happy with the results. So that's exciting. Great job, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And I have to, I don't think they're joining the call this morning, but Kay Karina on our team, she's our manager of community outreach, really spearheaded this process. And she did a really fantastic job. So I wanted to give her the kudos here for you all.
And thank you all. I will welcome Sarah to come off mute and share some team updates about where we are in hiring process. And you will see linked in the agenda for your review and updated org structure.
Great. Thank you, Kendra Jo. Yes, so a couple updates. Kendra Jo mentioned earlier in the call, we are welcoming 2 new members to our team. And so Jen Page began work at MCA on Monday, and we're very excited to have her here. And then Chris Bonik, she is the grant manager for MooseNet. Chris Bonikowski will be welcoming him to the MooseNet team as well as general manager the week of July 6th. We do also have 2 recruitments that are in their final stages for open positions that are highlighted in blue on that org chart that's linked. And so I can provide a bit of an update on how those are progressing. And so we are in the final stages of the Director of Grant Administration position. And we finished our second round of interviews this week, and we're conducting some final follow-up conversations with the finalists. And so we hope to have an offer out for that position in the next week or so. So very excited about filling that position to complement the team and fill that team fully. They've been doing a great job of working to cover that position in the interim, and we'll be onboarding soon with some new resources for that role. In addition, we are also filling a new position, a position that's coming back to our organization of information systems and data manager. And so we also conducted final round of interviews for that position this week as well, and have selected a finalist for that position, and are aiming to get an offer out in the next few days. And so that position, it will be great to support both our internal systems as far as our platforms and working with our managed services provider, and then also helping us with our data as well, making sure that's in a good place. And they'll be working with our information and research and data team as well. And so I think that, one other note I can add as well is there are 2 interns that we are currently recruiting for. And so there is an internship open in the communications department as well as an internship for data and research. And so those are also in final stages for the summer program. And so we are hoping to bring a couple interns on to the MCA team also in the short term.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. Just a huge thank you to you. That is so much recruitment to be doing at one time, and to all of our team members who are participating in that process. It's been going really smoothly. So just exciting to have such great candidates and such a great process.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. It's a team effort for sure. There's a lot of effort that goes into those hiring teams, so it's all parts of the organization are involved.
Any questions or anything folks want to ask before we head into program updates?
I do just have one question. Has the, I'm trying to think of a proper word, difficulty in getting updates from NTIA impacted the recruitment process or being able to attract candidates or delayed us in wanting to fill jobs?
Not at this time. So, and I think partly because we are hiring and recruiting right now for areas of work or open positions that are known or need to be or were previously filled and we need to fill. As we look ahead, I mean, there is a world where if we had been on deployment guidance 6 months ago, we would have had recruitment potentially around any capacity needs for that. So we are not going to go out for more capacity on a program we don't have clear guidance around or clear. Well, I feel like we do have a commitment from NTIA until we see that guidance and we know how to take action on it and what that process is going to look like. We are cautiously optimistic, and it's where we'll get right into it in my update. Actually, use this as a transition. We did not receive guidance on the 22nd. We did reach out to NTIA for that. And while we held the 22nd, not because they named that date specifically, but in a congressional hearing, the Secretary Lutnick expressed that we would have something within 2 months, and that was back in April, and so this is that timeline, and he seemed very committed to that. We did not receive that guidance and have followed up with as such. It doesn't slow down or stop the work the team is doing. We continue to build out the BEAD program with huge milestones happening over the last couple of weeks and into the next with contract execution across our portfolio. That deadline is coming up at the end of July, where we'll have to have all of our contracts fully executed. We are finishing up what it will look like to go out to RFP for verification and validation for our BEAD funding. All of our locations under the BEAD program are with NTIA. Final locations are with NTIA for their review, and that leads us into environmental and historic preservation permitting, and some NEPA work. So we are progressing as we need to, and for the non-deployment funding that we don't have guidance for, we are working as a team, led very much by David Bresnahan, on our team to build out the framework and skeleton of what would we do if we got guidance tomorrow? How as a team are we going to approach reviewing that? Who will share responsibility? What the communications will look like to the board, to our team, and based on some of what we know or maybe assume from conversations, how will we then take some of those next steps? The last thing we want to do is have anyone expect that guidance comes out at 8 a.m. and by noon we have a clear plan. It's going to take us a couple days to work through and talk with other state offices and really understand what the implications will be. From there, we will then build out, will we need more capacity? What will that look like? And that will all come through any program design and implementation plan. So long story short, no. And recruitment, I mean, Sarah can speak to more numbers, but just for the Director of Grant Administration, we had at least 80 applicants submit materials that we reviewed through. I think there was actually more than that, but they didn't make that all the way to me for review. And then had just incredible candidates through the first round interview, the second round interview. It's partly why we are not fully decided at the moment and working through some more questions is because we had such strong candidates that were really meeting our needs and for the I can speak for the hiring committee, would be multiple interviewees that would be a really great fit for MCA and bring skills that we don't have or we need additional capacity around. And my understanding, it's been that way across all of our opening positions. It's a good problem to have. We like good problems. I'll keep moving through updates to just keep us on time. Most of the updates are really, substantially built out in the streamlined slide deck that we shared with you all. So I just walked through our bead updates. MooseNet really should be no surprises there, but we're making a great deal of progress on poll and make ready applications. The checks are going out, they're getting cashed, we're moving forward through that process. I think it's really good for our team to actually be in the process that we have been a fly on the wall to for so many of our grantees. We are now the entity that is actually doing that poll process and make ready work. We are working through, as I mentioned, with the increased capacity from Tim Schneider and Chris Wanikowski. We're really going to see that development and execution of the OMC RFP over the next couple of months, which will be a critical milestone towards commercialization. As the MooseNet network evolves, as does our wireless connectivity work, with David Bresnahan leading that for us, we expect to have a more detailed draft plan for board review later this summer, and it will go to public comment, and then it will go live by the end of the year. Really excited about getting into some of the data that's underlying that report. We've had a lot of increased outreach from communities over the last few weeks around prospective tower builds that they've been approached about. That includes Waldoboro, Noblesboro. We've had conversations with Surrey. It's really interesting where we are right now across the state with activity that's happening in the wireless space as well. We'll be kicking off a roundtable of our ISPs and wireless partners within the next month to start digging in and having some partnership conversations there as well. The last piece I want to draw your attention to, and we can have a brief discussion, is it's a follow-on from the Digital Opportunity Fund conversations we've had over the last couple of months. As we get to operationalizing that fund and utilizing CME assessment fee and some additional funding within it, we are starting to build out the structure of what those programs will look like. You open that document we shared. We're really looking to deploy available funds from both capital projects and CME to address the identified needs, leveraging that funding to incentivize further match funding for the Digital Opportunity Fund, and then aligning that funding to inform public sector connectivity. We are hoping to build out an internet safety training program. It would be a small grants program that would launch within the next month and carry us through the end of the year, as well as continuing to bolster existing partnerships through Maine Tech Share, Tech Help for Me, with connectivity through those programs and the operationalizing of MooseNet long term. So we'll probably have a plan. We'll get to this later on around programming call and schedule for the next fiscal year. But the board should expect to see some opportunities coming up of investments through the Digital Opportunity Fund into broader network of partners to advance things like internet security. We are just wrapping up a process of bringing on a new connectivity hub, hopefully through a supplemental round within that program. And as we look to continue to bridge between digital opportunity and our MooseNet efforts, what it looks like to do some planning and assessment within the public sector space for shared benefit of that utility. I'm sure that was a lot.
That's
a lot, as I was
that's
saying.
A lot.
But it's
any questions? That is a lot, Kendra Jo. Thank you.
To also share publicly that this work hasn't stopped.
Yeah.
We are trying to find,
Exactly.
even if it's small ways, to continue to invest.
Any questions? That's a lot of information provided in advance. Thank you. Any questions for Kendra Jo?
And the digital opportunity. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Digital opportunity, all that planning, that's also part of the strategic engagement, right? I'm looking at it. All that is integrated together. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you'll
Yeah.
see a lot of, and I'll let Laura see this, you'll see a lot of overlap. Like these
Yeah.
don't
Okay.
live in silos. They are very much integrated into each other.
Yeah, the way that we've been talking about it as a team is we actually can't afford capacity wise to think about or act as if these are separate sets of activities. And so, when we're out in the community meeting with, anyone who's interested in digital opportunity, we're also setting up, meetings in that community with potential donors. We're also meeting with business leaders, right? We're making sure that we're really taking advantage of any touch points that we can have. And then also doing a lot of like hypothesis testing around messaging and continually infusing what we're learning and what we're hearing in different communities and saying like, hey, we heard this in Holton last night. Like, is that ring true for you here? And so really trying to make sure that we're building on information as we go as well.
And then just to clarify, MooseNet, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. The operational, the contract, I can never remember. Anyway, but that is really crucial, and the board will be getting a lot more information on that
Yes.
in July. I'm losing track. I know the infrastructure committee will see it first, but it's coming up.
Yeah. July and August is when you're
Why
really
not?
going to see the outputs of from the RFI to the RFP to get to that, whether it's um, OMC, JV, how
Yeah.
we're going to move forward into commercialization, that's the long game, right? Like we're
Mhm.
building it now for that long-term sustainability of all of this work.
And is there any pressure on Commerce I mean, to actually get the non-deployment fund issue resolved, or can they keep just kicking this can down the road all year? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't know that we're seeing as much pressure right now as maybe we saw when they delayed. But from a state broadband office perspective, there is. We'll share that Andrew has been in touch with our federal delegation. When he's been down in DC, non-deployment funding has been top of mind in all conversations, not only with our federal delegation, but with others that are really have a position to play. One of our, actually, but um, two of our bead subrecipients over the last 6 weeks have been in DC and have had conversations across multiple state delegations because, as you know, both Fidium and Direct Communications operate not only in Maine but in other states as well. I believe Sarah Davis had mentioned she had 9 meetings in one day down on the Hill. So, and non-deployment and bead deployment as well continues to be a thread throughout those conversations, and we really appreciate their partnership and talking to us beforehand, making sure that we're aligning and supporting and taking that opportunity to continue to push for it. Non-deployment will be critical for the success of our bead deployment funds as well.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And as always, when we know, you will know. And we'll keep giving you updates. So I am going to, with our next 10 minutes, hand it over to Laura to walk us through some engagement updates. And then around the 10:45 mark, we'll transition into finance and operations.
Perfect. Yeah, I can go through this quickly. So yeah, an update on Connectivity 2030 engagement. We've been attending an average of 3.3 events per week over these last 2 months. Which if anyone's tracking that means our team is busy and driving all over the state. Just the past couple of days, myself and our communication senior manager, Jenna Ingram, were in Holton for an event, and then made use of that drive to then have some great conversations with some business leaders in Bangor on the way back south. So we're all over the state, and just want to do a quick plug for in July, we kick off Driving Connections 2.0. And so if you remember from last summer, that's Andrew getting in Buttercup, the Volkswagen van, and hitting the road to talk to folks all over the state about connectivity. And so we have 2 separate weeks. We have a really great set of meetings for that as well. And so we're going to hit all 16 counties and make sure that we're in lots of places. So we'll give you that schedule once it's final. And we'll hope to see some of you if we're in your neck of the woods as well. And so with that, the document that's listed under discuss here, Carlos Barnuevo, this is, you gave me a really good segue into talking about how all of our activities are intertwined right now. And so that document that's linked there is really a primer on that for you all right now, is really thinking about how we're working as a team to ensure that our digital opportunity fund work, our programming, the commercialization of MooseNet, our policy approach coming into the fall are all aligned around this same notion of we're trying to understand what connectivity has to make possible in people's lives, the barriers that remain, and what the conditions are that are necessary to achieve that. And so that's what Connectivity 2030 is. And so if you were in the staff slides and taking a look at that, it's really what we're trying to both live internally as well as message externally, in that in order for Maine to sort of go big again with connectivity and with digital opportunity, yes, of course, we have to still continue to increase access and quality of connection in all of the ways that we're doing with our infrastructure projects. We also have to work just as hard to make sure that there's a policy, funding, programmatic, and partnership landscape that makes that all possible for Maine, especially in the context of the conversation we were just having with our federal funding, and just the word I've been using is unreliability, and that's the one I've landed on that feels politically neutral, and making sure that we're creating this landscape in Maine that can help Maine achieve what it needs to do. And so there's also, if you scroll down to the end of that document, there is a really high level calendar that also tried to reflect in the slides of that this is what we're working toward as we head into the fall months. And so keeping that report to the EUT committee in October, that's obviously a big deliverable for us as we move forward, and is informed by everything we learn over the summer months. And then when we will have an event in December to release Connectivity 2030 platform and plan. That is also coinciding. December, we will also be able to launch the cellular and wireless connectivity action plan on that timeline. We are also going to make some announcements around the Digital Opportunity Fund and all of that great work that Kendra Jo talked about in terms of how we're capitalizing some of the existing programming that we have through CME funding. And so by that point, we're really looking to have this sort of catalytic moment where we can both do some fundraising around it, but also launch Maine into this new operating system for connectivity moving forward. So it's going to be a busy 6 months. That's an understatement. But we do think we're really well set up to make sure that we can deliver on each of these things. So it's exciting. Any questions about that strategic alignment before I move into talking about the policy landscape in particular? Okay, great. So the
quickly,
other,
Laura.
oops, sorry. Yeah.
No, we have so many things going on that I want to make sure that the board can either identify, raise your hand, like, is the board up and willing to join us at times? So looking at things like driving connections, I believe there were a couple of touch points last year with Andrew and some board members throughout that week. We had a site visit last year with one of our last year before last, maybe at this point, time is a blur, with one of our federal program officers that Carlos Mello joined us for dinner afterwards on. We'll have another one for MooseNet this fall, which would be great to have a couple of board members join us for. So just wanted to kind of temperature read on board's interest and availability. Obviously, we would give you plenty of heads up time in our ask, but does everyone feel like they're in a good place that they could potentially weigh in and join us? So a big thumbs up from Carlos Mello. Awesome. See, waving hands and thumbs up. I like it. Thank you.
It just really depends on the when. Kendra Jo.
Yes, absolutely.
It really does.
We'll definitely let you know on the when, and we'll make sure it's fun on the how, right? Because it's still summer in Maine. We want to enjoy it.
Yeah, there was definitely a piece of our searching and creating our calendar that I was like, if we're not hitting every like county fair or festival, we have missed opportunities there. So thank you all very much. That's really exciting. We'll reflect that back to the team for sure. I know just yesterday there was still a blur of action to finalize the driving connections calendar in particular. So we'll definitely share that once we have it. I did also just put the link to the Connectivity 2030 landing page within MCA's website in the chat. Our calendar of events is linked there. I will say in this for this audience, it does not include a lot of other meetings that we're having, like one-on-one with partner organizations or legislators, right? Like there's a lot of activity that's not reflected on that calendar. These are the very public events that we're either hosting or participating in, but we try and make sure that it's up to date. And so there's also numerous ways to participate and lend any insights that you have about connectivity in Maine, or if you have a listserv that you wanted to send it out on to your organization, or share it on social media. We're making sure to do a ton of promotion on our end, but would appreciate any and all assistance that you have in your networks to really get our survey out there as well. We did put an update on survey responses so far in the staff slides. We have 369 responses thus far, and we knew this is the initial month-ish that we've had this in the wild, so 2 months actually. We were going to try and rely on a very digital approach to survey dissemination, but that of course does not get at the folks who are most impacted by the digital divide. So maybe people that we want to hear from the most. And so we very purposefully have a sampling methodology now that includes a boots on the ground MCA staff bringing, we call them our rack cards that have the QR code for the survey to municipal offices in and around where we each live. So we each have 3 towns or cities assigned to us where we are bringing rack cards to libraries, town halls, and any third spaces where people tend to congregate, and will allow us to do that. We also, as of July 1st, if you are an avid Maine Public, Maine Television, or Maine Public online news recipient, you will start to see our underwriting campaign that kicks off on July 1st. So we'll have, if you hear on the radio like this segment brought to you by, some of those will be MCA, and we'll also have some video featured on Maine Public Television. That is in an effort to get to some of our more rural folks who do rely on radio or cable television for access to news and programming. And we also have some promotion, paid promotion on Google for the survey as well. And so we're really trying to boost our respondents in those ways. So we're excited about those different efforts. Okay, getting into briefly the policy memo here. This is mostly for awareness.
Laura, Mike, you had your hand raised.
I did. I didn't want to stop the flow here, but and I could probably look this up, so apologize. But do you treat all 16 counties equally? Clearly, we have more needs in some counties than other counties. So in
Absolutely.
targeting and scheduling, can I look at that schedule and see that divide? That's a bad word. Well, not divide, difference in how your schedule is in the more rural counties.
Yes. The great thing about underwriting with Maine Public is that we are going to receive a wealth of analytics as to who is seeing what when in which locations in the state, depending on the timing of both a radio placement as well as a television placement. And then online it's more of a click through and what am I trying to say? Views. There we go. But no, we do the short answer there is no, we do not treat the whole state the same. And one of the ways the analytics from the Maine Public underwriting campaign will help us is that we will then be able to have a more purposive sampling model for the places in the state that we are not reaching. And so we'll be able to see that through their analytics and then be able to say, okay, we have the fewest responses from Piscataquis County. And so what do we need to do in order to make sure that we're targeting both that location and then, within that, are there different age groups that we are particularly missing, right? How can we make sure that we are getting a representative sample of the state of Maine that we can then confidently generalize any insights that we're making on?
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, very quickly, because I know it's 10:48, so I will take 2 minutes, Kendra Jo, and then keep us moving. So the policy architecture that you see in the policy memo, most broadly, I know we've talked with you all and we've had conversations about the different agency consolidation avenues that we can take going into the fall. In addition to that, right, so we have certainly that piece of the work in policy land. But then we also have various other policy options that we can explore through the work. And again, thinking about all of those connected activities of Connectivity 2030 and thinking about that policy program, fundraising, partnerships, landscape that make that work possible. And so myself and Andrew mostly, but also Kay Karina, our community outreach manager, have started to schedule conversations first with legislative leadership, obviously from the previous session. We don't know, we don't have a crystal ball and can't predict who will be elected or reelected in the fall. Or assigned to the EUT committee. And so we wanted to reflect this policy ambition spectrum to you all and say that it is our sort of recommendation that we can explore up to level 4 in this document without really needing to have a more specific conversation around what those conversations should look like with you all. But then level 5 is the only place I'll sort of drill down a little bit in this document. This is sort of the go big if it becomes politically possible scenario. And by politically possible means we elect a governor who is excited about connectivity. We have representation in the EUT committee that again would also be willing to explore that, and that we have bill sponsorship champions who would stand with us in our coalition of partners to move that forward. And so it could happen. We could have a moment where we have the opportunity to go big. And so just wanting to reflect to you all that this is the work that's going on in thinking about our policy approach. And that starting next week, have conversations with legislative leadership that are kicking off to start to explore some of these themes. And so what I would welcome at this point is a discussion around that. And certainly if there are any concerns or any unwillingness to have us explore policy options in this way, that would be really important to know in this moment.
to be clear, it's level 1 through 4 is what you're talking about. 5 comes at a much later date.
Yes. And we would certainly like that is it would come post the first week of November and maybe even into December because we would need to know who has been assigned to committees in terms of legislators. And those assignments don't come until mid-December usually.
Do you have any internal worries about just there's a lot of moving pieces on the strategy front? You know, the Connectivity 2030 is happening. You're going to be going out, separately or not separately, but you're also going out to the legislator and trying to really understand how these two pieces come together and what the landscape is going forward. Do you have any concerns about being able to integrate all of these conversations? We just it's a lot and it's a small team unless we
Yes.
haven't brought in any outside resources. So this is all on the group, right?
It is. I think we also have really great partners in the Digital Equity Alliance, in the Maine Broadband Coalition, in other folks, so like at the department, doer, I'm not going to get that acronym right, over at DECD, who are our great partners in this policy work as well. And so while this kind of legislative relationship building legwork and hearing from folks about their priorities is a big lift capacity wise for our team. I will say, I am not concerned about being able to bring it together, only because this is sort that's the fun part. For like me personally, I'm excited to bring that together. I do think, from a capacity standpoint, our engagement team, the team that I work with, we're still fairly new at the organization. It's only been 7 months, right? And so still trying to both think from a fiscal perspective as well as what are our needs perspective, what do we need to bring on in terms of that capacity? But I do think we are going to have to rely on our partnerships and the strength of our coalition to make sure that we can all carry the water into those policy conversations. And a big part of that is message discipline and making sure that we're all on the same page. And so that's why this Connectivity 2030 and working to get out in the community as much as possible, as early as possible this year, is a huge part of that.
I'm just going to chip on by saying while that is definitely a concern capacity wise, I'm more focused on strategy and prioritizing exactly what we need and when we need it. Because I know it's great to wish for everything, but those of us who've spent years in the sausage making world, it's difficult. So strategy and making sure the board is agreeing on our focus, and what we really need. And this would be wonderful to have focus.
Great.
So just keep us posted, Laura. Thank you for all the work.
Absolutely. And I will say, we purposefully kept this at a high level, knowing we have a lot to talk through in budget land today. There is so much more detail behind this document that I'm happy to share at our next meeting.
So Warren, I'm very, level 5 is something I think we all aspire to. The tradition in the state has been a very distributed way of attacking these types of solutions, and it's an ecosystem rather than a point of the spear that attacks it. And so I would just recognize that we live within that environment, and how do we work within that environment to ensure we're moving the ball. Tradition will tell us that the state's capacity to provide the majority of resources necessary is usually limited, and therefore you have to cobble together constituencies to attain goals. And I just want you to be thoughtful. I know you are, but recognize the challenge that represents.
Absolutely. Thank you for holding up the crucial element of that coalition building, and also that, here in Maine, it is distributed responsibility, distributed power, and that often taking smaller bites at the apple as opposed to eating the whole thing at once is a preferred approach. And so certainly, our conversations about the different pathways to accomplish the policy goals that we have will include also, what does it look like to make sure that that coalition and cooperation exists across agencies and organizations.
Thank you all. We are going to hand it over to Lori and David to first walk us through Q3 fiscal year 26 financial report, and then get into financial projections for 27 through 29.
Great. Thank you, Kendra Jo. And actually, the very first thing we're going to do is actually give a very brief update on the CME financials, which I didn't quite make it into the agenda there. But let me share my screen here. All right. So, we're going to give a brief update on what's going on with Connect Maine and their budget. And then we're going to focus on MCA, do a pretty brief update of the Q3 FY26 financials. The executive committee went through that in more detail 10, 11 days ago. And I think we move relatively quickly into the financial projections and the operating budget. So Connect Maine, which I think is pertinent as we look at projections, given the discussions around MCA and CME function or integration as we move forward. So this is where Connect Maine is financially and the activity. This is a cash flow analysis, which is prepared by Solix for Connect Maine. Solix is a entity that has a contract with DECD and multiple state of Maine departments to provide financial oversight. Solix controls the Connect Maine bank accounts. They do all the transfers. We are providing the oversight and governance support, coordinating the board activities, reporting, etc. The only real activities going on in FY26 were collection of assessment fees in this top row, some interest income, and then the assessment fees paid out to MCA, and then the Solix assessment fee. All the other expenses are paid for by MCA, and Connect Maine was projected to end June with around just over 30,000 of cash. And as we look forward to FY27, similar picture. We're projecting that Connect Maine will collect 2.6 million of assessment fees in FY26. There'll be some minimal interest income. The full 2.6 million would be dispersed to MCA, and that the organization would incur 31,000 of Solix related expenses, leaving $5,000 of projected cash at the end of June of 2027. This budget and this actual full report has been sent to the Connect Maine board for their review and unanimous approval by email, and we're in the process of collecting that email. So I just thought it was useful for you guys to see that. If you have any questions, let me know now. Otherwise, I will move on. All right. Hearing none. All right, that's what was circulated to the board for approval. Okay. Before we get into the details of the Q3 financials, a few caveats to set the scene here. We went through the actual numbers with the executive committee at some detail Monday the 15th. These are unaudited quarterly financials. And the primary changes that we are going to be integrating are related to MooseNet and related to balance sheet. We have been, and Laurie and team have been engaging directly with Barry Dunn to receive guidance as to how we should be booking and making adjustments to MCA's balance sheet to reflect the activity at MooseNet. However, the devil is always in the detail, and we're going to be going through a detailed audit process over the next few months. And some of how we're exactly booking and the details of the amounts on the MooseNet side may adjust slightly. What we're trying to show you today is a picture of how we are going to be presenting MCA core and MooseNet side by side and give you a sense of the directionality of the financials so that you can see where we're headed from a financial presentation standpoint. The two primary balance sheet adjustments that have been made for the first time in this quarter are related to construction work in progress, which is the building work going on, and then some actual fixed asset recognition related to the in-kind revenue from Maine DOT and Network Maine. Those assets have been added to the MCA balance sheet. The other key impact on MCA's balance sheet is that we are recognizing revenue when we incur the expenses, and the revenue is related to the grant. However, the expenses are not being expensed on the profit and loss on the income statement. They are being capitalized and being held in this construction work in progress, because those assets are going to be used over 20, 30, 40, 50 years of MooseNet's existence, and they're going to be depreciated over that period of time. Which means that MCA is showing a huge net gain because we have income and we have no expense. But we have this growing asset on our balance sheet. So we're showing you MCA core and then MooseNet side by side to try and make sure that we are being as transparent as possible. So this is the first time we are showing you. This is the regular version of our balance sheet. I'm going to talk a little bit with my pointer here. The two new assets have been added here at the end of Q3, construction work in progress, and then fixed assets, which is the in-kind contribution. So 4.6 million of assets have been added to our balance sheet. On the net asset and liability side, what we have created for the first time is a corresponding, what we're calling depreciation reserve for now, knowing that we're going to have to depreciate these assets at some point. And we may or may not, in the initial years of MooseNet, have actual sufficient revenue to cover depreciation. We wanted to make sure that we are creating that reserve. But what is more important is what that looks like from a MCA core versus MooseNet perspective, because this is where I think it gets strategic as we look at the net asset side as to what is MooseNet and what is MCA core. Because we've got the MCA consolidated. So this column here corresponds to the Q3 total on the slide before. So this Q3 total we're now taking and we're breaking it up between MCA core and MooseNet. The only MooseNet assets are these two assets we have just added to the balance sheet, and then the cash and cash equivalents that we have that are related to the reserves that we have already allocated. And then we've got this depreciation reserve, which then allows us to see MCA core as a standalone and identify the amount of unallocated and unrestricted net assets for MCA core at the end of Q3. Okay. Doing the similar thing here with the income statement. I want to talk through the changes that we've made. This is the regular presentation of the income statement. We're not showing a split between MCA core and MooseNet, but the change here is that In Q3, we have reversed expenses that were related to Moosenet construction because those have been capitalized and added to the balance sheet. And any expenses we had that were related to Moosenet construction in Q3 were also capitalized. So we're showing this year-to-date huge net surplus of $6 million. But we know that 4.6 million of that is related to expenses that have been capitalized on our balance sheet that were funded by grants. So we're looking at an adjusted net surplus of the 1.3. Same logic here. I'm not going to go through these first two columns. The MCA consolidated is the year-to-date 9-month totals, and then we've split it between Moosenet and then MCA core. So you can see the impact of Moosenet and then what is actually going on with MCA core. We're going to continue to refine this approach and how these are being presented. If you have feedback, would love to hear it. If you have burning questions right now, would love to hear it. Otherwise, I think we should keep moving on to the budget. Q3 financials, this is just the operating budget versus actual. We had an operating surplus of 1.3 million versus a budget of 0.5. So we were outperforming year to date from a financial perspective, which is predominantly due to expenses being lower than projected. All right, any questions on any of the Q3 stuff? Okay. I'm just going to open my screen now so I can see you all better. There you all are. Okay, then. So we're going to talk through the key assumptions from the operating of both the program revenue, operating revenue, and then program expenses and operating expenses, and show you that picture over the next 3 years. We're going to show you a detailed view of the operating budget for FY27. We're then going to break and move into executive session, where we're going to have a more detailed opportunity for you to ask questions about resource management and the operating budget as it pertains to vendors and staffing and the core expenses. And we will also allow the board to ask any specific questions around some of the vendors that are being presented for approval today. We will then exit executive session, and we will be seeking approval for the FY27 operating budget and then for 4 vendor engagements. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Key assumptions. And this first one is a big one, and I want to make sure we understand it because the variability of the outer years of MCA's financials are highly sensitive to BEAD non-deployment and the impact of BEAD non-deployment. For the purposes of this budget, we have assumed that there is no financial impact from BEAD non-deployment in FY27, that any financial impact from BEAD non-deployment activity will start July the 1st of 2027, which is the first day of our next fiscal year. Is there a scenario under which we get guidance and we submit plans, and then there's a discussion and a back and forth on a budget, and then we go through curing? Is there a scenario under that where money actually starts flowing sooner than that, maybe next spring? Yeah, there probably is. But for the purposes of being able to show you what MCA looks like with and without, we made the decision to assume that there was no impact from and the inability to forecast what that picture looks like. We made a decision to start that in FY28. The other key assumption we are making is that of the 197 million that is remaining to be deployed, we are assuming that MCA will have access to all of that 197 million, but that the split between the amount available for programming, like direct programming out the door, capital to grants and subrecipient contracts, will be 97.5% of that, and that MCA will we'll utilize 2.5% of that for MCA admin and program expenses. I think that's a very conservative assumption, especially as we look at some of this information over here. Speed last mile was 29%, MJRP is about 15%, and CPF is 5%. I think the key to understand is that this isn't just a pure admin. This is also program operations and actually running some of the programs. And MCA has a team of experts that do a lot of program design and delivery. So that is the assumption we're making on BEAD non-deployment. On the CME service contract, which is the other most potentially variable revenue line as we look into outer years, we're expecting it to grow by 3% in the outer years and in FY27, which has been in line with the trend we've seen over the last 5 years, including of CME's financial history. We don't believe that the FY27 revenue is at risk at this point, so we're pretty comfortable with the FY27 budget that we're presenting, but we don't really know where the FY28 and 29 revenue picture will be regarding that assessment fee. And then for MooseNet, the other big revenue assumption is that we are not assuming that there are any early operating revenues in FY27 related to any segments of MooseNet coming online and delivering revenue. So this picture here, this is our programming only. This is the amount of money that will be going out the door. We're projecting that we'll be deploying $84 million of capital in FY27, which is materially higher than the last few years. We're projecting we've done 46 this year, 61 in FY25, and then 27 and 37 the couple of years before that. So it'll be the highest year of dollars out the door that MCA will be managing. Oh, sorry. Part of that is because we're doing a lot of things at the same time. We're wrapping up MJRP and CPF funding up here, and we're kicking off BEAD last mile. We're doing the bulk of construction on middle mile, and then there's some NEC and MBRC money to deploy as well. So as we look over, and if we are assuming that we receive the full 197 million of BEAD non-deployment money, and we look at the portion of that that's going out the door, we project that we're about 36% deployed at the end of FY26. So we're only just about a third of the way through this deployment journey if we look at the available capital to us, which I thought was very interesting. If you exclude BEAD non-deployment and say, nah, you don't have access to that, that ratio of like what have we already deployed increases to 58%. So we're getting closer on our capital deployed. So if we now turn to our expenses, and on the operating side, the key assumptions we're making is that 25 FTEs to fill that org chart that Sarah showed you earlier, with a 24% benefits and fringe ratio, which is consistent with the ratio we've seen in the last couple of years. That fully staffed level actually represents an 18% increase over the salaries in FY26 when we were still, there was some turnover, and we were also trying to hire some specific positions. The vendors are also expected to grow the vendor expense in FY27 versus FY26, 19% growth. And as we step back from that and looked at that, the logic is why are we needing these two core groups of resources, both our staff and our vendors, to be growing in the next fiscal year? There's a lot going on. This is just the headlines of what's going on between the programming and planning workload, and we've talked extensively about this work. So it makes sense that we've got a lot going on, and we need the resources to successfully execute all of these things in an incredibly busy year when we're deploying more capital than we've ever deployed before. So what does that mean from a financial projection standpoint? It means that we're projecting a balanced budget for the first time, as opposed to prior years where we've been presenting, balanced operating budget. And the implication of that is that we are utilizing all of the assessment fee for operating expenses, or projecting to do that in FY27. Again, there is no impact from BEAD non-deployment on this FY27 line. FY28, absolutely there is. There's an impact of 2.5% from BEAD non-deployment. And with that very conservative amount, and with CME projected to be consistent, we're looking at about a $500,000 deficit in FY28. So let's look a bit more at the breakdown of that operating revenue over the next few years so we can understand the trends and the moving pieces. Oh, sorry. So we're projecting 9.1 million of operating revenue in FY27. We've got access to all of those funds. None of those funds are at risk or unpredictable at this point. Where this changes is we look into FY28 with the CME contract, and then the BEAD non-deployment funds coming in 5 million over a 4-year period of time. If that ratio from BEAD non-deployment was 5% instead of 2.5%, which I think is extremely viable as a scenario, there's another $1 million, another $1.5 million, $1.5 million. The variability is very high depending upon both the timing of BEAD non-deployment and that ratio of programming versus internal administrative expenses. So here's the breakdown of operating expenses for FY27. And showing you the breakdown of how we're getting to a balanced budget and where that increase is coming from. A big chunk of the increase is coming from professional fees, services, and subscription fees. We had a very good question in the executive committee, and I wanted to break that out in a bit more detail. Underpinning this line item, professional fees, services, and subscription fees, we have 8 subcategories of vendors and partners. Within each of those categories, we have a very detailed spreadsheet that builds out over the next 3 years the specific services that we're going to need with either hours or a monthly retainer, whatever the normal engagement is for that type of a vendor. We have, and I think the total for the number in this here is about 80 different names. I think there's about 45 to 50 vendors, and then there's about 30 that are software agreements, service agreement fees, etc. So we have done as much detail planning as possible to not just look at FY27, but also where do we think we might be headed in FY28 and 29. But we do think that vendor work is going to peak in FY27 to meet the operating work, the programming work that is going on. So before we head into an executive session, this is where we're at as a summary. Projecting a balanced budget, which would be the first time we have a balanced budget as opposed to a surplus. And that balance makes sense given the full scope of planned programming activities the organization has on its plate for the year. There's a lot of talking by me. I'm sorry, guys. Any general questions that would not cause us to answer in a way that would require us to be in executive session? Or comments?
Just as always, thanks for being so well prepared and having all the details so that we don't really have any questions. Pretty clear.
All right. But I do think there's a couple of just a couple of items we wanted to talk through with you in executive session of a more sensitive nature that we'd look for a motion. I think there is language in the agenda and some recommended names to join.
Yes.
Just to confirm, just to confirm, no questions for David at this time? Okay, I've not seen my whole screen, so I'm assuming no. We're anticipating going into executive session for 20 minutes or so, and then we'll return to the public session. So I will make a motion that the board enter into executive session to consider information designated as confidential under the Maine Freedom of Access Law 1 MRS Section 402(3)B, matters within the scope of attorney-client privilege in Section 405(6)E, consultation between a body or agency and its attorney concerning legal rights and duties of body agency pending or contemplated litigation, settlement offers, matters where premature public knowledge would clearly place the agency at a substantial disadvantage. I would request that the following members of the MCA team join for the executive session, with the understanding that they may be asked to leave the executive session at any point at the request of the board. I request that Kendra Jo, Laura, Lori, Sarah, and David join the executive session. I think we have to have a motion. A second, I mean. Jim? Yep. All in favor? Quinn, if you could do what you do, please.
Okay, see everyone in the breakout. Thank you. Like slowly everything comes back through the ether.
There it is. Doesn't matter. We're all we all left
Here
anyway.
we are.
That's right.
I think this is just about everyone, I believe. Quinn, if someone's stuck in the in-between or in the breakout room, if you want to pull them back, please feel free. But I think this is all of us. So thank you all for waiting patiently as we went through executive session. We are going to, I'm going to hand it back over to Mike to say his things, and then we'll move into vote.
Right. Okay. For the record, the Board of Directors conducted executive session, considered no other matters other in the motion, no other matters than in the motion to enter executive session, took no final decision or vote on the matter during the executive session. Thank you. Now, back to the agenda. The next item, I should say, is approval of the Maine Connectivity Authority fiscal year 27 operating budget, inclusive of $1 million allocation. And, I just wondered, did David still here? Oh, there he is. He came back. I'm sorry. I missed you. So I would take a motion on that to approve the budget. Robert?
I'll second.
Second? Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item of business is the approval of, sorry, I lost it again. The approval of 4 vendor engagements. Kendra Jo, you want to just give just a 1-minute discussion of what they are?
Sure. Happy to. So Butler Law is our general legal counsel across all of our programmatic and organizational work. Fluent, and it's for a total of $230,000 for 720 hours. Fluent is a communications vendor directly supporting our digital opportunity work, like me Tech Share, Tech Help for Me, as well as our broader organizational communications for the next fiscal year, for a total of $200,000 at a monthly rate. Outside Angle is an organizational and strategic vendor that it has historically supported our offsite and senior leadership facilitation and engagement, and will be critical as a vendor supporting our Connectivity 2030 development and execution. And DWFS is David Weddick, and he is our financial advisor and strategic finance vendor, and will be supporting us for 780 hours for a total of $228,150, all of which have gone through our internal board-approved procurement policy.
Thank you. Motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the 4 as a slate.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. Apologize. I keep losing that document.
Well,
next item is good.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yep.
Nope. Quinn just will make sure that she gets all of those approvals noted. We do just, if folks have 2 more minutes. We have a brief request for review and approval on the fiscal year 2027 board and committee schedule. It is linked in the document with a clear kind of summary. This has been all of our conversations leading up to now, really put on paper with dates and times. But the MCA board meetings meeting every month, CME board meetings being quarterly in joint with MCA board meetings. The executive committee would be the same month as the board meetings and alternate with the programming call. So again, trying to streamline our requests to the board of the audit and risk committee a quarterly basis, and the HR committee on a bi-monthly, at least through 2026, and then there will be a revisit opportunity at the end of the calendar year. If ever the meeting schedule is outlined below, our team has reviewed this extensively and wanted to put it here for your approval.
I move we approve.
Second.
Questions? Everybody want to change at least one date? No. All in favor?
We'll just have to adjust around it.
All right.
Okay, opposed? Okay, that is approved as well. Thank you very
Great.
much. And
you will see
you folks,
a bombardment of calendar invites from Quinn.
All right. Bye, guys.
Yes, we do.
Bye.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you very
everybody.
much. That's a
Bye.
lot of information from the staff. And only 2
Absolutely.
minutes
Great
over.
weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.